do just want to pop on right before we start and give you a quick content warning. No big deal, but we do talk about circumcision a little bit later in this, and there are some minor, not graphic, but specifics enough that little ears might wonder what we're talking about just a little bit. It's brief, but there it is. That's Elise Keller.
And that's Elizabeth White.
Here you go, and this is Theology.
Theology.
And that is our friend Caroline Dooner.
Yay!
Hi. Caroline is the author of, let's see, the F It Diet. I'm not bleeping this. I can go through and bleep if I have to, but man, it takes a lot of time. So the F It Diet, Tired as F, and the Substack blog website, really up on those terms, Problematic, where you also have the God talk conversation. That's where you're at.
Where we all met, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think Elizabeth, you followed me on Instagram before Substack, right?
Yeah, long time ago.
Okay, because I remember
minor interactions here and there, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the fake librarian.
Yeah. It's a good name.
It's such a good name. Like, it's such a memorable name.
Much like A Bundle of Hair Screaming.
It's really good.
That's like the best online handle ever.
It is. And me and Elizabeth have talked about this. Her name came from an ex, and also mine did. And so they are very good at having really good nicknames.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, that's funny.
Did he call you a bundle of hair screaming?
That is how he described me.
Which is like super mean, but really funny. Caroline, if your handle represented you,
what would it be?
What would it be?
Based on an ex?
I don't know. Mine's not really an ex. He didn't make it that far, but
it to be an ex.
Yeah. Ex-ish.
If I had to have a handle that actually represented me,
or that,
what would it be?
Oh, yeah.
I need to brainstorm.
Okay. I don't know. All right. I would like to know. I would like to.
My original Instagram handle before, when it was just a personal Instagram, was Dooner Bugs.
Oh.
And it was.
Is that like a nickname?
What?
Is that like a nickname?
Not many people, but some people have called me Dooner Bug.
Yeah.
But what I was really saying was Dooner bugs you.
Oh.
Bug you.
Like I'm screaming at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mine is actually just stupid. The guy misread it. It was on a dating, like an online dating thing. And I put in there prior to this, I'm independent now, but when I was libertarian years ago. And I wear glasses, so I have glasses on in my picture. And the guy was like, so you're a librarian? And I was like, oh. Nope. And he was super mad that I wasn't a librarian, that I baited and it was like bait and switch, he said. I'm like, wait,
that is so
I wear
funny.
glasses, and his like accusation was, and you're wearing glasses in your picture. I'm like, yeah, I need those to see.
I have glasses, and I wrote libertarian, and you misread it.
You misread it, and so he was like mad at me, and so I was like, oh, you're not gonna date me.
Wow.
And so he didn't make it to the X point, but he was so stupid that I was inspired. And also, I'm a book lady.
You are a fake librarian.
I am a fake. I was like, oh, but actually, I totally am a fake librarian. Like, I have little stampies for my book. I stamp my books. Like, I play librarian still as an adult.
What?
That's a confession for another time. You guys, I'll show you my book stamp.
We're gonna need to see that.
Yeah, I do. I still I literally
understand.
Did you not play librarian as a kid, where you would pretend to check out the little books?
Yes.
Stamps.
Because I always wanted to use, like, Caroline, you remember in school, like, they would have the, like, official.
I would love to do that. Like, I would have loved to. I don't know that I ever did, but I would, if I had the setup, I would have 1,000,000%.
Yeah. Yes. I created like enough of a setup that my mom was like, you need fake cards. So she got me fake cards, like little cards. So we literally had that. Now what I have is
literally had a fake library as a child.
I did. Have I shown you the picture of my parents' library?
No.
It's beautiful. So I'll show you that. Like You'll
Please.
get it if you see that. I'll put it in the show notes for everybody else. I'm going to forget again. Yesterday, I forgot we were recording a podcast when we were recording, and I'm going to do that again, but that's actually fine. It's super fun.
Yeah.
So I'll send you
Yeah,
pictures, but I was raised
it's
by
good.
another fake librarian, a couple of them. And now I have a book press, like where it embosses it, like it's a
Well,
book.
what are you embossing it with? Your name?
Yeah, so it says like Ex Libris, and it's from the library of Elizabeth White, and it has like a little book in the middle. My husband got it for us our first Christmas when we were married because he gets
That's
me.
so sweet.
And so I like stamp all my
Because
books.
you are a fake librarian, for real.
Yeah, yeah, for real. I'm a real
Wow.
fake librarian. Yes.
Oh, I love
That's
that.
too perfect.
So that's, so it's only perfect. I accept problematic. I kind of think problematic for you, but not because
Yeah.
you're problematic,
Yeah.
but it's
How
like
could
on
I
brand.
forget?
It's like it gets you there.
How could I forget?
I mean, I was not
That's
perfectly you, but it'll work for now. For our purposes,
for
you can
our
be
purposes. I
problematic,
just
Caroline.
like there's definitely a part of me that's like maybe I should be renaming it. Like maybe it's not the best.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think you're problematic anymore. Like you've successfully weeded out who needs to be weeded out,
Right.
who doesn't align, who
Hmm.
doesn't whatever.
Right.
Like they no longer get the vibe, which is fine. So you're not problematic anymore.
So was naming it that, was it tongue in cheek, like I'm so problematic, I'm just owning that? Or was it
Yes,
like, bye
because
guys?
that's what people just kept saying, like angrily, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how problematic you've become. I never would have thought this. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start a place where I'm going to continue to bother you on purpose. So you leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I'm just owning it. If you think I'm problematic, then fine. Then I suppose you can think that this is problematic, and here we go. And I'm going to keep going. And then my question is just like, does it still fit, or is it? And I don't know. I don't know what else I would change it to. So
Yeah. I think you'll know something else will come up and you'll be like, that's it.
yes,
Yeah,
I think so.
for sure. And in the meantime, like it does work because I think like a truly I don't want to say literal, but truly like intentional commitment to the Bible and to scripture, it is gonna come off as
Problematic.
there are
I mean
parts that are problematic.
the culture at large still will continue to believe that, and I think it's only going to get worse, honestly.
Oh no, I have to think that you're right. I don't know. I feel like sometimes there might be a pendulum swing, like back to sanity, but I don't see signs of that. It feels like it just keeps swinging and
Well,
swinging, and there's no
I
limit
think
to
it's
it.
just getting more and more polarized. So like I do think that
Mm,
there clearly are people who are waking or are having these experiences with God and coming to faith. Like
Yeah,
so many, yeah.
we have met a lot of these people, right?
exactly.
But I also think that the other side is getting more extreme, and there is, I don't know, I mean, conspiratorially, I could say that it's intentional to like further demonize the Christian worldview.
I agree. I feel like
Or
I know we've
villainize.
talked about, like, it almost feels a little manufactured sometimes. Like, that's how it comes off. But I think a lot of the culture is actually getting more theological. So now we have to say something and, like, we have to get involved because, like, we're not purposely inserting ourselves, but, like, you're almost forcing people to get involved and like to have an opinion on this.
It's hard to know too, like I felt this way with the effort diet and anti-diet stuff the more I wrote about it and the more it became my world on social media, and those were the accounts that I followed and those were the people who followed me, and I curated what I saw to be anti-diet, where I got to a point where I was like, I don't actually know
Yeah.
what like the culture at large is saying about this stuff, because I don't really see it and I don't really care. And so I almost got I got a little skewed where I thought like, oh wow, like everything's so anti-diet these days and like people are so cool with it, but it wasn't really, I mean, it's a little
The
bit
problem
true.
is solved. It's over.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It was
We're
like a
done.
weird, I was in a bubble and I was like, I don't actually know like what everyone else is saying about this. And I I just wonder if that's what's like, I wonder
Right.
if that's what's happening a little bit with the
Hmm.
faith stuff, where like I'm connecting with people who are on the same wavelength, and it's making it feel like there's this like huge thing going on. And I think that there is, like, I actually do think that there is, but I do
There's a
wonder.
little confirmation bias that we're experiencing because of who we're
Absolutely.
around, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I still think that there
But
is,
like there's a big movement towards this. Like at least that's how it, even in real life, in the 3D as I call it, like it seems like people really are finding their roots of faith in something, like in
Mhm.
some, it doesn't, like I tend to see like a big push towards like orthodoxy. It seems like there's a big like movement there, but also I think people are just having like a faith crisis, and then refinding it again, which I think is wonderful, and I think that's
that was
great.
my process.
Yeah, I think that was, well, that's really like why
Yeah.
we have that in common. All of us have
Yeah.
that in common, because it's like there was like God was always there. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm an atheist or whatever. It was just like, it's whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
I
Like
do
I
think
can think
there's
about it
movement
later.
because I have a lot of like, I'm a very intellectual atheist friends. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
sorry if you hear this, but like you won't. No, they probably will. That are like, okay, I'm trying to think of how to say this without like revealing someone's story, but enough things happening in their life that they're like, I cannot help but see a bigger, like a bigger picture, a bigger hand in this. This is like the the last person I ever in a million years expected to come to this point. And now it's not fully happening, but he's been a friend of mine for 20 something years, and he's always been like, I'll start to like couch and not say, not that I will, I'm not going to lie or be dishonest about my faith, but I'm going to say like, you probably don't care about that area. And he is a really good friend. He finally was like, I actually do. Like, you can say this to me with, and it's fine. I still care about you, so I
Yeah.
want to hear what's going on. That he thinks that that's always how he's felt. That's not true. I
Mhm.
absolutely know that this was offensive in prior times and it was something I couldn't. But watching some of that's age and a softening of heart and wisdom and all that. But I think also I can see his heart actively softening, and I'm seeing that all over. Like so both things are going on, but there is a group of people being reached that's new, and like we have at least a niche view. Like we can get in and see this, like in this very specific niche something is happening. And
Mhm.
I'm from my perspective, what kicked it off was really your, like within my worldview, my algorithm was your uh new age demons
Yeah.
Mhm.
blog post. It was a catalyst for a lot of people.
Because it
So
was so
you had
relatable.
no idea when you, so like I read you like you should read New Age Demon. I've already referenced this and we'll link it again. But like
Yeah.
that was a big deal, Caroline. And like I mean you couldn't have had any idea. What's going on?
Crazy to me. I get it. Like I understand, but like it's just so crazy that before I wrote it, I was like, this is the end. This is the end of my writing career. I don't want to write about this anymore. I want to have privacy with my this faith journey. Everyone's gonna think I'm insane. I even thought, like, I have this really good online friend. She's the one behind Capitalism and Glitter on
Right.
Instagram, and we had
We love
connected.
her account.
Huh?
We love her account
Yeah, we love her account.
so much.
We had connected and
We're
we
gonna
were
go find her.
Yes.
texting, and she's out there. She's a
I
big
think, was she on
contributor.
your podcast?
Yes.
So
Yeah, yeah.
I heard her on your podcast, so not totally new.
She's very smart. But anyway, so we connected on all these kind of like health conspiracy stuff. And
Mm.
she was the one person, I mean, I thought I was going to alienate everyone, but she was the one person I was like, oh. I really was thinking like, oh, all these like cool, like moderate, like open-minded conspiracy theorist friends that I've made in the past year or two, all of these people who enjoy my account right now, like I'm going to alienate all of them. And it sucks.
Yeah.
Like I was so like sad about it. And I just was like, they're going to think I've lost my mind. Like they're going to think that I'm so brainwashed, but I knew that it was the direction I was going in. And I was sad. I was like kicking and screaming. I was
but you
mad.
did it.
I was like, this sucks. I don't want to be a Jesus person. It's
Yeah.
dumb.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I really
know.
was like, this ruins my whole shtick.
Yeah.
I
You
was
feel
mad.
very like this is annoying.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it was,
Like,
I wouldn't say
why
that
do
you
I
were
care?
apologetic, but witnessing that from like a distance, it wasn't that you were apologetic. Like, I'm sorry to put this on you, but but you were more like incredulous. Like, I can't
I
believe
can't believe
I'm
it. I
saying this
understand
to
what
you.
you think. Like, I wanted people to know, like, I know what you're thinking.
Yep.
I know what you're thinking. You think I've lost my mind. Oh, Caroline had a hard few years and this is her coping mechanism.
And now she's brainwashed. Like now
Yes, I
she's been
knew.
brainwashed.
I knew what people thought. And I was worried about that too. I was like, am I losing my mind? Like, is this a coping mechanism? Is it just like wishful thinking that like, but there was a real piece that I couldn't explain away, that stayed. And there was also like story after story after story. I mean, I was like deep in listening to people's stories, and there were so many corroborating details and aspects of the stories. And then even people in my real life, and then people who I would connect with on Insta, like it was just like world building. And I was doing crazy research on everything. So it was just like, it was clear to me that God was like, this is the direction you're going in. And I was mad about it. I was like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. I can't believe this is it. and but I thought that it was the end.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I can't.
Ooh, that's so good. This is so good. Like, do you see how I want to use the word obedient? And like I hate, that's a word that's loaded for me, and I don't like it. I'm not an obedient to God because I like am a good girl. Just not, that's not it. But I think you and I talk about this a lot, at least like the law written on our heart. But there's this like thing that you were willing to just kind of sacrifice your career. Some of this was like a perfect storm. Some of it was just you were in the right place at the right time, and God clearly, helped put those pieces into place through providence. But also, you like kept doing the thing. You just like
Exactly.
kept following the path, and that's such an intellectually honest position. And like people respond to that because this has obviously been really effective. It's such a humble approach to it, which I think people don't get a lot.
That's the thing. Like it's not curated. It's not performative, and it doesn't come off like there are so many. Think of how many people you follow like on Instagram or even in real life. Like go to rock and roll church, and how many people do you see that are like polished and like this, and like this is the right thing to say, and like this is how you're supposed to think about it, and this is the only right answer to this specific thing. And that's not how you approached it, and I feel like that's so relatable because that's how we really all feel, but everyone's like afraid to be like, because these are we're like, so what do you think the meaning of life is? Like these are
Right.
key.
No big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
like,
it's a really approachable.
yeah,
It doesn't hurt that it's, entertaining if you're all, it is funny. Some of it's funny. Like life is funny and horrible and
yes,
entertaining at times from the
and
outside. And so
absurd,
like,
and yeah, so it's just such a good place. Like, and I know we talked about this like in our little intro video. Like, whenever Caroline posted that you were gonna do this Bible study, I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna like join, and then if I hate it, or if it's like every other Bible study where everyone's like, this is this, and like whatever, I could just slowly back away like
Yeah.
into the like Homer Simpson, and I don't have to like say anything. And it
Right.
wasn't that, and it was like so
you did not
refreshing.
do that.
Yeah.
I did not do that. And of course I was like, and I can't do that if this.
No, you can't. You can't escape it. So I don't know. Like we talked about, mentioned New Age demons before, but I think I mentioned it in the notes. I didn't directly reference it. Can you just give like a high level like explanation of what that
Oh yeah.
feeling, what
Okay.
you're announcing with that for you?
Yeah. So it was the very first thing that I truly wrote about what at the time I was calling my Jesus situation.
I still love
Because I was like, I will never refer to myself as a Christian.
it.
That's what I believed at the time. I was like, no, Christianity is the brainwashing, right? That's the cult. So I'm never going to be a Christian, but like, I'll be like sort of Christian.
Yeah, like let's see what it's
You're
about.
gonna be a Christ
Yeah,
follower.
exactly. Let me I was really, really resistant. I was like, Christians are hypocrites. Obviously, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
But I knew that, okay, so I would say October 2022, I stumbled on these ex-psychic medium testimonies.
Okay.
And it made me realize so many things about what I had been involved in spiritually over the past many years. And I was like rapidly listening to these stories, and I was having a conversion. I was like having like this softening of my heart, and I was having this, I was resistant because for all the things, all the reasons I just said, but there was something true there. And really it was Jesus against the darkness, Jesus against the demonic forces who pretend to be good, who pretend to be these like angels of light that everyone's worshiping and connecting with in the new age in quotes. Right. And it was just, it was honestly fascinating to me, because it's very dramatic. Like if true, which I believe it is, it's an incredibly dramatic reality that I was involved in, and that I was, I was deceived. I was in danger. I was like, and so many people I know were too. And it just became so clear that like, this is fascinating, but it was also my way in, like, right. And I thought, I was like, I will never write about this. I will never, ever write about this. I'm going to quit writing. I'm going to go off and figure out something else to do, and, pray and like figure this out on my own. And then 2 months later, I just was like, I don't know. I'm not in control, I guess. And I was like, I need to tell people what's going on with me before I stop writing. Like, it's my duty to tell people what I've learned, why I'm in this Jesus curious situation. And then I'll stop writing, but at least I will have said something about it. And my way in was a belief in the demonic through all of these stories, and then all of these memories of experiences that I had. And I knew that it was interesting. Like, I knew in the very least that it was interesting. I thought people were going to think I was insane, like paranoid schizophrenic is what I thought people.
Yeah.
That was the fear. It was like, people are literally going to think that I've completely lost my mind.
You've lost it. Yeah.
And I'm sure that some people,
some are people, some people want to believe that, at least, and project that, because it's really scary. If this is true, but you like don't buy into it and you don't want to give that stuff up, then that's really scary. Like, that's a weird world. It's not the entire group of women now. The group has the problematic book Bible study people have God talk. That's such a good way to encompass that.
Super cash, Elizabeth.
Super cash God talk stuff,
just very cool, very laid back.
What is your cup? Speaking of, you have a bendy straw.
It's like a huge. It's from the hospital.
but I really respect the bendy straw.
I have to have a bendy straw because I'm cool and casual.
My cute little central perk.
Super cash.
My central perk. I love my central perk.
Guys, look at my super cash pint glass.
Look at that. Look at our gorgeous cups. Look at my designer central perk cup that I've had since Friends was on TV.
Wow.
This is not a later one. This is since Friends was on TV. I'm
the OG.
I'm an old. So
I'm an old.
So this group of people, though, they're not entirely, it's not entirely ex-New Age or anything now. I mean, there was a good portion of that, I think, in the first one, or people that had dabbled, partially because it's so invasive in our culture.
Exactly.
I want to say pervasive, but it doesn't feel invasive. Feels better. It feels more real. So it's invasive in our culture. It had touched me as a lifelong believer. Not time for that story like today, but I want to tell you. I've told you in pieces. I want to tell you the whole story, Caroline, because you were so important to it. So funny. Before you knew who I was. I mean, you had seen the Fake Librarian, but like the impact on my life that this had, first in the diet arena, and then in the spiritual arena. Uh, I mean, it was like it really realigned me. I don't know. It was really powerful, even for me, the new age stuff, because I realized how it had sort of drifted into my life in small ways. But overall, this phenomenon, like focusing on the women who have that background or who have at least been really impacted by it, I think I've been theorizing for a while that the reason that this group has, because I've been doing Bible studies for a long time. I've done a lot of Bible studies. This is not typical. Nothing about this group is typical. It is like lightning in a bottle, and it is so cool. And I'm like almost afraid it's delicate. Like it's so good. I keep having to like rely and trust God because I just care. You know, we're in this group. We've fallen in love with each other. We all just love each other and want everybody to be like okay and to grow spiritually. And it's almost like a church. Like there's this church, our little girl church on online. Um, but I think that this group of people was really primed because they already believed in the supernatural. That was not a hurdle to get over
Right,
because they
right.
experienced it, and maybe more so than a lot of lifelong Christians have experienced the supernatural because, as Elise is famous for saying, the other side has great customer service. They're going to answer when you call, so people get those experiences in a way that we are less likely to.
Right, right,
And
right.
I feel like that popped up. That has come up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes
Elise,
sense
have
to
you,
me.
I mean, you didn't do so much that. I mean, you went into the Gnostic Gospels. I know you like pretty deep.
Oh
But
yeah,
I
but
mean, were you experiencing the supernatural? Is that part of it too, or sort of an aside?
for sure. No, like I've told both of you this, I think. And this is a story for another time. I grew up in a haunted house, for real. Like, and again, like people listening will be like, that's dumb. There's no way. I grew up in a haunted house. And I've always had experiences. I've always, but also like coming from my background, like just my family background, like, my grandparents' village that they came from was like initially pagan, and there was a huge conversion obviously to Catholicism in Italy during this time, but there were still people practicing the occult. And my grandparents would tell me these stories of women who would practice witchcraft, and they would go to the church and like lay their tools under the altar to charge them, and they would oil themselves in the field, and they would swear that they would fly, like they were able to fly, like they were real witches. And so this has been part of my culture and like part of my like these stories, and it was such a dangerous thing. And like my grandparents were so superstitious, and but they weren't superstitious, they believed it to be true. Like
Right.
they were just relaying what they saw and what they experienced. And so I feel like I've always been around supernatural things, whether invited or not. And then like you go through this like, I went to public school, and it was like I knew enough to like never touch a Ouija board, but like that didn't stop me from, I don't know, like visiting psychics or like playing with tarot or whatever, because it's like, oh, that's white magic.
Right, the Ouija. Oh, but you saw the Ouija board as dark.
Right.
I saw tarot as super dark. I had a tarot deck. I would use it, and then I would say, "This is dark," and I wouldn't use it.
I've
And
never
because my
used it,
animal
but I've
spirit
had,
guide used it.
yeah, like I've had my cards read, and I actually, at my parents' house, I'm sure in my old bedroom, like, I'm sure I have a deck, but I never touched it. Like, I remember the party I was at. I remember someone was doing it, and I was like, no, like, you're not a trained, like, you don't know what you're doing. So, like, I don't want you to, like, read my cards. But I remember them giving me the deck and, like, to hold on to. And I think I'm sure I still have them. But it's it's just so invasive is a good word, because it's so casual, and it's like fun, and it's like who cares, like whatever. I find it too really interesting that even people who like claim to be atheist or agnostic or whatever, I guess more so atheist or just like secular in general, will take psychedelics. Like psychedelics are, a big part of the culture. They'll take psychedelics, they'll experience all the same things, they encounter all the same beings, and come out of it and say that there is no supernatural. Like,
Oh, we have to recommend the podcast that you sent me the other day, the Blurry Creatures one about that was about psychedelics.
Yes, I think it's called.
It was largely about. No, that's not the one you sent. I listened to it after the one you sent me. There's one that is
Was it
largely
Haunted
about.
Cosmos or was it Blurry
No, it
Creatures?
was Blurry Creatures.
Okay.
Okay. Was it
So
recent?
also Haunted Cosmos just did one too. I listened to two back to back, and they were like very very similar. So I might
And
be
they're so
conflating them, but
good.
I was like, are you guys like just writing each other like the same? Okay, I have a problem with Haunted Cosmos a little bit. I told you this because the
Oh
guy
yeah.
is Brian Suave that's on it, and he is a misogynist straight up for sure. However, he also is way better at podcasting than some of the other people, and it's really entertaining. And I was like, I'm not going to go to the pledge level, but also this man sincerely loves the Lord. He has a blind spot, but like I cannot listen to this and think that this guy is not also. It really has actually challenged me a little bit because I'm very certain that this man is really has a huge blind spot. He is not just a misogynist, he's cruel. Some of the things he says are cruel to women. He loves his wife very much. He definitely like, and that's very clear. So I don't feel that he might be abusive. We don't know. Anybody could be though, like that's inside of the house. I don't get that vibe. He has what he interprets to be a biblical worldview about this that is colored, I think, by, his church history and also by our culture and the stuff that's pretty pervasive in that part of the church. So I can't endorse, there are even people that he endorses and platforms that I think are actually actively bad, but like, it's a good podcast.
It
I
is a
feel
really
like
good
I can have the
podcast.
discernment. It's good. I
Yeah.
so I gave up my my high ideals to listen to it. My husband won't. He loves it.
Oh.
He listened to it long before me, but he's like, I cannot support
Oh wow.
someone who, for him, it's protective about me.
You know what else, guys? He's a Calvinist.
He is, isn't he? I could tell. Yeah. So
I think
I'm just saying.
those podcasters are reformed to some
it's clear.
spectrum of reformed.
What?
Yeah.
What did you
A
say?
lot of the podcasters.
Oh, so many of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they have some great things to say.
Yeah. I don't agree with all of their theology, but I also, again, like, I feel like I'm not tied.
You love a Calvinist podcaster, though.
I love Calvinist preachers. I really do. So, and then obviously, once they get into like certain things, I'm like, I don't agree with that, but we're just gonna leave that there, and the rest of it, baby, you preach. Take me to church.
So is that because they know the Bible? I may not agree with the interpretation, but I agree that their Bible knowledge is sound. And I think that's almost like a built-in feature of Calvinism, because you're it has a cycle of like sending you back into the word to like make sure for sure you're one of the elect and like to confirm. But I actually think it ends up you guys are doing exactly that.
Oh yeah.
It was cute. You guys were like posed exactly the same. Sorry, this isn't going to make sense if you're listening and not watching, but I just looked and Elise and Caroline both had their face rested on their hands in the exact same direction, and it was really cute. You guys, twins. So I think it comes with that, but they like know a lot. Now, I always thought, okay, but John MacArthur, like he's so good, and John MacArthur, I literally got rid of every book that he
in my
house because for him there's a connection. I'm not saying it's universal. I don't know if it's built into Calvinism or if it's really just the people that I've observed. I think it has to do with the level of fundamentalism, which isn't bad in and of itself. Like I hate using that word even badly, because like believing the fundamentals of the Bible, not a problem, but I tend to see like the using like 2 Timothy and some of those things to make women not eligible for things tends to go hand in hand with the Calvinist view. And I don't know why it's a pattern. I don't actually know. Maybe it is like part of the actual Calvinist doctrine. I'm not really sure on that, but I do see them align a lot. And I forgot where I was going with this. I had a point, but there we go. That's that about women and Calvinism. That's another topic I really love. We haven't gotten into that too much, but
there are probably a lot of people who are listening who are like, I honestly actually have no idea what you're talking about. Like, what is that?
So
okay. And do we want to?
Yeah, I don't.
Is this the direction?
I actually want to do it.
I don't think I can.
Okay, I don't. Yeah, we don't need to. We have so many things to talk about. We don't
because
need to
I don't think I could do a great, like I could give an opinion, a little opinion,
right.
but I don't think I could.
If anyone's interested, you can look up John Calvin. He has 5 points of Calvinism. It's called Tulip. and that's
It's
your
like
history.
predestination. Everything is
Predestination,
predetermined.
Right.
well, yeah, like
But
I
there's
don't
an
know.
elect,
There
right?
is an
The
elect. I
people
don't
that were
remember
be
what
saved. Yeah.
the T stands for, but
Total depravity.
total
I
depravity.
know that one. That's the only one I know.
The only one I know is irresistible grace, because I can get down with like some of
I can
it.
get down with irresistible grace.
Yeah, like I really believe that if God is like, you, like I'm coming after you, like you can't.
Oh, I do too, because I've witnessed it.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
I
point. Can you tell who I'm pointing? I don't know if it's all the same place. I'm pointing at Caroline. I've
yeah,
witnessed that.
I definitely think, but overall, I definitely am a firm believer in free choice and free will, and you can say no.
It
You
implies that God created people that he knew that he was going to send to hell, and there was nothing that they could do about it. That is what it implies. It implies a cruel God who does not love all of his people and does not want them all to be saved. That's what it implies. And that's the core problem, in my opinion.
And
yeah,
my crux is along that line, and it's that God is good. We know that that's the core tenet. I don't the way I landed on Christianity, which I have a very brief talk of why I'm a Christian, not something else. Uh, and a lot of it is that it's a God that is good. He is not capable of evil. He's not capable of causing evil. He is sovereign in that he has power over everything. He could do it. That's what the sovereignty means. He does sometimes intervene with providential intervention. I'm certain. I have seen him occasionally do that. He always has the right to, but has he preordained and determined who is going to be saved and who's going to listen? I don't think so. Sometimes he steps in and he's like, you know what though, you got to get saved because you are so important to the story, the overall story. I think that happens sometimes when he's orchestrating it, because look what he did in the Old Testament when oh, was it Jacob and no, it's not Jacob and Esau. It's the brothers that ended up being oh my gosh. We just read this and we talked about the like birthing, being the heads of the nations of Israel, and then the group, the Abrahamic tribe that ended up becoming
isn't that Jacob and Esau?
Is it actually Jacob and Esau? I don't know.
I think
No,
so.
it's not, because anyway, it's the one who the
We should know that.
wait a minute. This is so good, you guys. Look, listen to, we're Bible scholars practically. We're fake Bible scholars. We're fake theologian. Too.
I'm gonna look it
So
up.
anyway,
Look that up.
look it up. And so what I'm talking about is the period where so it's Abraham and Sarah didn't believe that God was going to give her a baby. And so she sent her slave to have, the baby by
Oh,
him.
yeah.
And so that and the son by the slave ended up being, so God went to her and said, like, I'm sorry that this was bad, because she fled because she was being so badly abused. So my point is that, like, Sarah was not treating her correctly. She was effectively dismissed, discarded, because now that Sarah did have a baby, she didn't want the competition, and God said, "I'm still going to bless you." Like
Ishmael.
Ishmael. Yeah, see, that makes a lot more sense. So that he still used that story. He still used Sarah. He was like, yeah, I'm still going to use you to be the birth of, because Christ is going to come from this line. The entire church is coming from this line. I'm still going to use you. And
Yeah, he uses messed up people all the
all the
time.
time. So he uses them as part of, so we like saw him say, like, I'm using you even though you suck. And like, that's such a specific way, and we can see, I just think that's such a good example, because we can see, like, obviously we are still seeing the fruits of that particular sin has set the world, has set Muslims against Jews for all of time. This is thousands of years later, and we are still experiencing the fruits of that choice of Sarah's. So, like, our sin has consequence because it has consequences, because they're natural consequences.
Right.
God doesn't, he's not like, you get out of jail free card. Like, that still had one, but he still used that for his purpose. So it's like this circular thing that if we limit God to, like, our reasoning and be like, you either make things happen and we have no free will, or you are powerless and we do whatever we want. Like,
right. I
it's
think
just
that
not a binary choice like that.
I think what's asked of us is our participation, and that's the part that is hard.
Yes.
That's the part that's hard for us. He makes it easier. He gives us the like will and the strength to do things, or the guidance. But I think that our participation is to us, and then we're helped.
Right. So
I think you see that too, even like in the big, like in the gospel, like it, Jesus literally says, if it's your will, take this from me.
right.
And he doesn't. And so Jesus still participated in his Father's will. Like he took it on.
And submitted to
Yeah.
that will, which is like all we're asked to do.
Right.
When we pray, when we ask for our daily bread, like that's such a good, remember when we learned the Lord's Prayer, when Jesus taught it, it's because they asked him, teach us to pray. It wasn't just like a pray this specific prayer, it was teach us how to pray. So that is such an instructive model for prayer. And give us our daily bread. That's been my focus for the last long period of time, because financial things have been difficult at my work and also at home, because for the same reason. I went 6 months without pay last year. Well, my husband was out of work. I still had to work full time. I had to rely on God for my daily bread. That was a lesson. It was not enjoyable. I honestly feel like I have some trauma around like financial stuff, partly from when I was like a single mom and, would have been homeless if I didn't have such a good network of people, but on my own, I would have been homeless. I have seen that God will provide for our daily bread specifically. So we're going each and every day. It's like one foot in front of the other, relying on him for that. That's what that means though, is like, help me participate on a daily bread. Like that's such a tricky one, because we're reliant, but I also don't think we can do nothing without God. Like that gets into the Calvinist thing. We can do all things with Christ, but I don't think that we can do nothing without Christ.
Right. And I mean, it is interesting. I have to say, I understand why someone would believe.
Oh yeah, me too.
It's literally all God, because even just my story of like, I was never going to write about this. And I was, I thought this was a lot of things I've done, including the effort diet, like a lot of things I've done, where I've been like, whoa, I was just like along for the ride, like literally along for the ride. But I still think there was I don't think I can take much credit, but I do think that I've had a posture of like wanting to trust and wanting to surrender, even just the teeniest bit.
Yep.
And that then opens the door to the grace and everything. And then God does a lot.
And there's a argument. Maybe your heart is softened. Maybe that you're in a position to take that because it was ordained. Like I don't agree with the mindset of like the specific doctrine of Calvinism. However, I also don't think it matters how it happens. I say this all the time, but as long as we get there, it doesn't matter why we think we got there necessarily. In this case, because what it doesn't do is anything heretical, like saying that we have to earn it's still not saying that we have to earn our salvation, which that's a dangerous thing to think.
Right.
So I like that it's not in that way. It's not dangerous, and there is a lot of scripture that seems to support it. I feel like we have to, hold the scriptures up with the context, with the understanding of who God is and who Jesus is and all those things. But like it is, I see it because he plants these things in us, and we do see God. We know that God will see his plans come to fruition. I just think that it's not a video game where he's controlling us,
right?
But he's world building, so it directs us down the path. Like he put the right obstacle here, so we'd go this way, and the right guide here, so we go that way. But he's not playing the controllers. He's the programmer.
Yeah.
That's a
good analogy, Elizabeth. Great job. I'm sorry. I was very impressed by myself for that moment. I said something. Nothing makes me happier. All right. I have another question for you, Caroline. This one's silly. I actually know the answer to this question, but not everybody might. I want to know your bugaboo, your faith bugaboo. Your little.
What does that even mean?
Okay, you're like the thing that I don't know. I might be using a local.
Oh, that I really struggle with.
Me and Caroline have a lot of these.
I know. Okay, I'm talking about a specific bit.
Specific one. So you know what I'm going to say, and I don't know what I'm going to say?
Apparently. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so about understanding about like why God didn't make it easier.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, this is the big one. This is the big.
So I'm talking about the big bit, the big bug, the big thing.
Yeah, what the heck,
Yeah.
God? Well,
Yeah.
this is actually the thing that I say to God all the time. I'm like, why? Why did you make it so weird? Like,
Yes.
it's weird. It's like,
Yeah.
especially for our culture, especially for someone entering into this story purely from the culture that we live in right now.
Yep.
I'm like, are you really telling me that all of this hinges on a blood sacrifice? Like, for real?
Right.
Why? Like,
Why?
and I can get there. I can look at the whole story and have moments, and I have these moments where I'm like,
Right.
wow, this is beautiful, this is epic, this is such a mirror, this is the old covenant and the new covenant, and like it can be really cool, but I'm still kind of having to ignore the fact that we are talking about blood sacrifice. Like, in the beginning, when I started reading the Old Testament, I was so stuck on, but why? Like, why would
Yeah.
God require these
Why does
animal
it have to be
sacrifices
this?
at all? Like, why? Like, if he's not going to require it now, why was he requiring it then? Circumcision, that almost made me lose the whole thing.
Yeah.
Seriously, I was like, you created our bodies. I would think, and I think it even is a law to not mutilate your body. Like, why is this the covenant?
So important. Why is it so important?
Elise and I have,
We talk about peepees all the time.
yes. Like, why is this such a theme?
Why is it such a thing? Like,
Such
we
a theme.
we like to talk about the blood sacrifice, the circumcision, and the eating
Okay.
of Jesus.
I actually have these are just like three huge topics. I have thoughts. I have been thinking about this specifically because I knew I was going to bring this up.
Well, let's
But there are no, let me be clear, there are no conclusions. I just woke up today and have opinions. Like,
Right. I woke up this morning. Good morning. I have opinions.
yes, my favorite.
But I like throw tantrums to God, and I'm like, you made this so weird. Of course no one's going to believe this. It's weird.
Well,
You seem weird.
Before you get into your opinions,
Yeah.
and I can't wait
I don't
to
just
hear.
want I'm going to need this to be a conversation to keep it going intelligently, so please keep it going when
I had like a moment where I was like throwing a hissy fit, and I'm like, this is why people pick up this book and they're like, no, I'm out. Like like it's so weird. It's weird. But I always go back to the fact that, like, because I'm a believer in the supernatural, I believe in other deities. They're weird too, and they require different
They're
things.
weirder.
They're weirder.
way weirder. They're strange and evil.
Yes.
Exactly. So if you can get there, then it's a little bit easier to think of God, big G God, and think, well, he's going to be weird too then. In my opinion, like, in my westernized 2024, I'm living in a house and I have heat and running water and I have a westernized view of everything. He's going to be weird to me.
Yeah, and we're talking on a magic box. So
Literally, we're talking across time on a magic box. So yeah, it's going to be weird. Okay, all right, I'm ready for opinion.
All right, so it's weird. I think actually that your supernatural worldview that this starts from is a really good position to start it from. And so this is complex. I'm going to try to figure out how to which parts to say, because I don't know. There's a lot of this and it's kind of intertwined. It's all very tangled up because we've talked about atonement theory in this too. So I think if we start with the supernatural worldview, that this is where I talk about the space trilogy being really useful by C.S. Lewis, because it removes the story from our mundane like, for us now, this is so commonplace that it's both strange and mundane because we've just heard it so many times. So taking it out of that, all of a sudden we now have placed this in a different world where we accept that there are rules that we don't understand. There are rules of engagement. There are natural rules. So I refer to it as the magic system of that planet, which in the book that's appropriate, but the magic system is what it is. It's that because of the laws, right? So it's inherent to the creation of the thing. So if we're in a world that is populated, that is obviously created, God's not created, but everything in the universe is created, like things already work a specific way. We are uncovering a little bit what they do. So understanding that like the the realm of the heavenlies, the spiritual realm, is a realm that exists and has rules already that we may not understand, that don't translate to our physics. So like
Mm.
we may not functionally be able to understand what that's accomplishing, because it's meeting a different requirement of a different set of laws that only God knows. And that's the way we call it mystery. It's not that there's not a solution, it's not there's not an answer, we just don't know it. So that's a very general. We also know like that when the folks at the time when the Bible was written lived in a world that was a populated supernatural world where they had expectations for how to relate to gods. And
Mhm.
so I think a lot of times God met people where they were, he spoke to them where they were. And that's what I think happened. I have more specifics on circumcision and food, but uh, I can come back to that.
What that makes me think of, and this is sometimes where I do so much research or I ask these questions and then I get a satisfactory answer or a semi-satisfactory answer and then I forget it, and then
Mhm.
I
Oh
go
yeah.
and then I circle back to like, why is this so weird? And I forget what I came to in the first place. But there is the more research you do on the occult and witchcraft,
Yes.
there's so much focus on blood, like power in blood and power in sacrifice, power in human animal blood, a life sacrifice, and even more power in human blood. And they use it ritualistically. And so there have been times when I've been like, okay, this is just inherently spiritually powerful.
Again, it's like it's one of those law, like it's just a
Yeah.
Yeah,
law.
it's built in. It's built into the system that maybe it's because this does have a power.
It
Like it
does.
is powerful. We have assigned it symbolic meaning, and we think it's so foreign and opaque to us that we like, well, it has to be symbolic. It's got to be not
Mhm.
like.
Mhm.
So I actually had a little moment about the atonement over Easter that I was thinking, this didn't solve it. It's not like a satisfactory answer. I like to use that term because we don't get a lot of satisfactory answers, but we build like a satisfactory base of knowledge that like we know enough to rest in it and to be okay with it. And then like the revelations come a little bit at a time. So this is not a new atonement theory. It's definitely one that exists. I would say that if I subscribe to anything, it's Christus Victor.
I agree.
Same.
But also there was the by our his wounds we are healed. Like if we look at atonement not so much as like a blood sacrifice demand of punishment for an angry God who demanded he had a human sacrifice, it's like, no, we had a condition of death that was
Mm.
caused by sin that had to be healed,
Mm.
and it had to be healed by the death of this perfect medicine, this perfect physician. That was the shed blood of Jesus, which we don't understand why, because we don't get the physics of it, because it's not earth
Mhm.
physics,
And it,
spiritual physics.
and it could have been actual spiritual physics that were set up, and that is what ended the need for the blood sacrifice in the first place. So if you can remember that, it's just a really great thing that God finally did. And
Yeah.
then it was and then there was also a symbolic aspect of it, which was, I am doing this for you,
Right.
Right.
Oh, and
and I'm
because
doing it so you don't have to do it anymore.
things work on many levels, and
Mhm.
I think that's the other piece that we always are like trying to assign. um we like try to read ourselves into the Bible narratives. Like we read a story and we're like, how does this apply to me specifically? And that's fine, but sometimes with the Old Testament, like that's not going to work.
Mhm.
That's not commanding you to like kill every one of your enemies in like this town. Like that's just not how it's that's not what's coming up. But like it's true because it's about Israel, and then it's true because then it's about the church as a whole, and then it's going to be as the world as a whole in the end times. Like these things come true on many levels, and I think that's true of a lot of things in the Old Testament. I want to give an example. I still want to come back to that specific, but I also want to say something. Oh my gosh, it keep happening. I get to the point and I lose it. I lose the idea. Oh, that all doesn't really answer why God didn't make it easier to
Oh
understand.
no.
Why didn't he
No.
say this? Right? Like, why
Yeah.
didn't he explain it? Why didn't he say, okay, so for future generations, just know that this is weird because of this?
Right.
Right.
So, I think that comes down to, is God controlling every thing, or is he inspiring it? because he inspired the Bible, but he did not control, this wasn't channeled writing.
Mhm.
Right. They
So
weren't in a trance.
it was inspired. So they filtered it through I don't think that means that they like made their own opinions and adjustments. I think they were true to what God wanted them to say, but I think they said it in their own words. They used their own words to say it for the most part.
Mhm.
So part of it's that those are the people at the time who wouldn't have. Even so, God still could reveal it to us. Like there still is no excuse, right? Unless he has a good reason, there's no excuse for him to not make this plain to us, because he's God. He's all powerful. He's got all that stuff. Jesus was the revelation of like the completion of the law, the revelation of all that. So part of it is that's kind of when I feel like that's when the kingdom came down. It changed how we communicate with God. But it still doesn't. Like he still could have. So at this point, we can only like theorize.
I
I
know.
think, and,
Yeah.
and like they're not satisfying. They're not satisfying theories.
It's not.
I get really disheartened, like genuinely, genuinely disheartened. And I'm sure everyone does, but I get so disheartened that Christians don't agree. Like,
Yeah.
don't agree. Like, I could see it as a beautiful thing in a way, if I force myself to, that like we can have different interpretations and have pretty much a similar core belief. And,
But it's really
maybe
not.
that's healthy, but I'm like, wow, we like, most of us are wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I struggle with that. And I know, like, Caroline, you are like on a similar track, in a similar vein. It's like someone has to be more right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
Someone,
I mean, like all these things. Truth is a zero-sum game.
yeah.
It is. No, the truth itself is finite. There is only one truth. We don't all have all the pieces. We know what the major points of agreement are, and that's really great. And I can see that there's a way for God to there's an opening for interpretation to reach people in different cultures, the things that are culturally relevant for them throughout time. Like it still does reach people. So he knew something about reaching people. There's always the chance that something really prescriptive that was like do A, B, and C, it's really easy to be like, no, I disagree with A, so B and C, no. Like
Yeah.
if I maybe creating something so specific and rigid and not open to interpretation just isn't inviting for humans, just isn't going to entice them in deeper. And again, that seems like that's a purely speculation, but
But
all
that's
we can
almost
do
where
is
you have
kind
to
of imagine the mind of God, like trying to imagine what God possibly could have had in mind. I think imagining the possibilities is like the next stage of that wondering. Does
Right.
that check out?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So
That does make sense.
he's reaching, I mean, it's working.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Even though in all of these different denominations and belief interpretations,
Yeah.
even though they're different, even though they're sometimes truly at odds, God is still there. Jesus is still working, and the Holy Spirit is still working in all of these people's lives, even if they disagree about what we could call secondary aspects, even if they seem like really big deals. So that is an amazing thing. That's actually an amazing thing. My brain wants the clarity.
Same.
I want
A, B, and C.
I want to not be wrong about this.
Yeah.
This is a genuine question. I'm digging for a question. Would you be more curious and like lean into your conversation with God more if you knew for sure how it all worked?
Ooh, that's such a good question.
Would you talk to him less?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
All I've got is questions.
It's a really good question. Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
For me, there's less depth, less exploration. A huge portion of this, I will straight up admit, is curiosity.
I think that's actually, Elizabeth, I think that's the most satisfactory answer I'm dumbfounded.
You can thank God for that, because I did not plan to say that. That just came out.
That was really good.
No, like that's perfect. Because I just thought about like, okay, what's something I do that is A, B, and C, and like think about like driving a car. It's like like these are the buttons, and I have to press these buttons, and I have to do this thing. I don't care about anything else about the car. Like the car is a non-issue in my like. I don't care about it. I'm not gonna look into it. I don't care. It gets me where I need to go. So I'm not gonna think about it.
You don't have to understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know how my car, I mean, I basically know, but I don't read the owner's manual.
Exactly. So like if I had to work with it to get it to go, I would be more curious, and I would think, okay, well now I need to do, like, today I need this from the car, and the car is probably not a great example, but you get what I mean. It's like if it was
Actually, I think it's a pretty good, even,
A, B, and C, yeah. If I did
I mean,
these things,
talk arithmetic. If you want to look for a concept, talk arithmetic. There is, I mean, sure, math gets complex at higher levels where arguably math is the language of God, topic for another conversation, but
we
for like
oh,
arithmetic, not,
can we get Adrian on here for that conversation?
not
Cap and glitter.
Capitalism glitter. She is really into gematria in a way that I don't understand.
I don't know
We
what that
don't
is.
It's some sort of I don't either.
Yeah, we
It's
don't
some
even
sort of like Hebrew had numbers.
Oh yeah, sort of like in the, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, yeah. I mean, there's possibility. I don't know. The reason I say that is so much of the universe can be described with in with
numbers.
formulas that like
Mhm.
don't translate to any other language, and so it's almost like it's math. I don't isn't necessarily the language that God speaks, but it's a Rosetta Stone. Like it's something we
Mhm.
can refer to like sort of look for understanding what God is trying to do, what God is trying to, like, it helps us understand it.
Mhm.
So, but at an arithmetic level, if we're talking about that, like, that's it. What, I mean, what more do you need to
Yeah,
know? 2 + 2 is
exactly.
4. I don't really care. That's the thing we learn in with the intention of memorizing it so it becomes habit,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which is a thing that Christians do. We get in the scripture so it becomes habit. We pray so it becomes habit. It is a fact that studying and reading writes these things on your heart so it becomes habit. But like what keeps drawing us back, I'll again present the argument against my own statement here, though, which is uh, there are folks who don't have that level of engagement. They don't have the capacity for that level of engagement. But I'd like to say that I know that Christ woos people individually on their level, at the level they're able to engage. That
Mhm.
is something you can just be a Christian for 5 minutes and you'll hear stories. Like there is a level of engagement with this that is a lot simpler, that doesn't have to require that a
Mhm.
child can grasp, or
Mhm.
somebody
For
who
sure.
doesn't have the mental capacity can grasp that much.
And
And
that's through, yeah, like the simple trust and I think
yeah,
prayer.
the gospel, knowing the gospel
Yeah.
message, and that is enough. Like it is actually simple. There is an A+B=C message to be learned,
Mhm.
but it
Mhm.
doesn't inspire lifelong obedience in somebody who's a complex thinker
Right.
with a rebellious heart, which is what we are,
Right.
right? So like we need
Right.
to be constantly convinced and wooed and drawn in, and curiosity is the in for me. And so
Mhm.
curiosity is an in for a lot of people into the new age, I think, because like
Mhm.
what it's like, there's this secret for uncovering what is out
Mhm.
there. I
Yeah.
can know it always comes back to we want to know more than other people know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
it's at the root of that. This is a very C.S. Lewis thing. The root of that desire is a good thing. It can get so twisted and perverted, but it starts with a desire for knowing things, like a desire for wisdom. Wisdom is like that is a good thing, biblically good thing. It's something we're meant to push after. So that's the most satisfactory answer I have.
I like
It's
that.
pretty satisfactory.
Okay,
I like
circumcision.
it.
Yeah, let's talk
Yeah,
about that.
this
I
is
have
what
a few. I have a few Old Testament things that I tend to reference that are like, the law at the time. Speculation. I know that now we no longer say that circumcision is like preferable or necessary, and it's not required of Christians anymore. We're not under the law. Um, and so they say that there are like no medical benefits. That's not entirely true. The medical benefits don't outweigh the risks because we have ways to treat STDs very
right.
well. We have preventive measures. We know about them. We know how they're how they're communicable. However, in that time, sexually transmitted diseases, there were no antibiotics. There were no, the priests were the ones who diagnosed your skin conditions, if you're unclean or not. It is true that it is more likely to carry bacteria. It, it,
Well, why did he do it that way then? He made it.
Yeah.
Good question. Good question. Okay, I have a theory that is, I want to hear my feminist take on circumcision. We
Okay.
have to have babies. And God was like, you know what? Men don't get to suffer that much. Like they don't have all the physical suffering built into their bodies. Um, and so
Oh,
I think the men
this
of
is like
that era,
their
the men of that era had no subordination to human. They would never be like subordinate themselves willingly to their wife or to a woman. So a way to submit to something that is truly, truly difficult is a way of training them. You're not in charge. You don't own
Mm.
your body. You don't get to do
Mm.
whatever you want with your, sorry. I'm putting content warning on this one.
No, this is actually, this is also, yeah, this is
Like
interesting.
this protects women and it trains men in a time when like culturally men just were the bosses. Like taking him down a peg a little bit could have been part of the goal. I mean, he was not easy on people at this time
Mm.
because we were
No.
baby, we were spiritual infants, and he was
Yeah.
training us. You have stricter rules for a toddler than you have. I have a 4-year-old and I have a teenager. My rules for them are very different.
Mhm.
My toddler has a lot more rules to keep him safe and protect him because he's dumb.
Right.
And humans were, it was a different time. We've had time, like my 18-year-old is like, I make sure, like I check on him, I love him. Now it's relationship though. Mostly what we have is relationship with occasional training and teaching, but it's mostly grace. It's mostly preparation. That's what parenting is when they get older. So I think that's we're seeing like in a grand scale what God was doing. So that's what I think somewhat about. Those are
Why
some things.
couldn't he have said that
What?
so plainly? But I really like what you just said. I think
Yeah.
that
But why
there's a
didn't God
lot
say that?
there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a great question.
Maybe
I think that answer
he
can come
needed
back.
us to be having this conversation and for you to say it. That's
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Me.
what would we be talking about though? Like, think of the content,
Yeah.
the amount of content that attracts people and draws them in. What would there be to say if we're just
Yeah.
like paste the same the one paragraph, the Christ one sheet that we can
And
share?
the clearer that it is, the more legalistic it can become too.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So
Because then
that's
it's
a
like,
really
oh,
good
you didn't
point.
do
You
that
can only
thing.
apply. Ooh. Go ahead. Say that. Say that. Finish that thought, Elise.
Oh, like that's a perfect gateway for people to point out like, oh, you didn't do the thing. You didn't do that one thing that you were supposed to do. It just opens you up to like judgment and shame and whatever. And I was thinking about too whenever you were talking about taking men down a peg in that culture, the Greco-Roman culture was very prideful. Like that, it was like who's the biggest and the best, and like who can like humility was not a thing. It was very
It wasn't a
shameful.
virtue.
No, and
It
so
was a
when Jesus,
meritorious group.
when
Like
he
that was the point.
exactly, and when he showed up to the scene and was like, "You need to be humble," people were that's offensive in that
Mhm.
culture.
Mhm. Mhm.
So much of our culture as it is, so much of our language, first of all, is developed from the Bible itself. So specifically the
Yeah,
English language. So talking about the English language, two of the main uh, pieces that developed the English language as it is today are the King James Bible, which is theologically kind of all over the place, but linguistically beautiful and arguably beautiful. Like, who doesn't prefer the 23rd Psalm in Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death? It's beautiful. And the Book of Common Prayer, actually, which I didn't realize, was written by Thomas Cranmer right after the Reformation, and that's the birth of the Anglican Church. Like it's a book of it just actually all the Psalms are in it. I don't know. It's like it's a additional book. It's not additional scripture. It's not like that, but it like collects the prayers are in there. The like order, the liturgy is in there. So like if you're like, oh, today's a baptism,
okay.
here's the liturgy. We read this, and then so there are all kinds of there are prayers though, like a collect for evening. It's spelled like collect, but it's collect. They're prayers. Collects are short prayers, and they're written. Some of these, if you look, like they're in a BCP, and we pray them every day. You pray them at church, liturgy, different one for a different day of the year, and you see who they're written by, and they're written by like, Jane Austen. Like some of these are incredible. I don't know if she did write a bunch. I have a book of her collects that she wrote. She was Anglican. They're not in the BCP, but it's people like that from the time
Wow.
that are like that wrote some of these, and so that they're beautiful, and they shaped our language. We
Yeah,
understand how language shapes our thinking. So we can't help the fact that at least in the Western world, our ideology, our language, our culture is actually an outpouring of the concepts from these major spiritual books. So like we can't separate, it's so hard to separate ourselves from that context, that I think that's also part of the reason that it's like, why is this so contextual for us, but not literal, not specifically stated? and I think somewhat it's easier for people to grasp that haven't been in cultures totally shaped by this because they haven't developed all these ideas about these things that are brought up that are part of our culture because we are shaped by the words we use. So you mentioned earlier, Elise, like Western, as a Western Christian, all this stuff, reading this from anywhere else in like in so many other places in the world in so many different times, none of this would be that shocking.
Right.
Like even circumcision. It's like, sure, God said it, we do it because we do
Right.
it. I'm not saying we have to have that. I'm just saying there's a greater acceptance. I want to touch on another specific, which is food. Food is
Yeah.
a really obvious one. And that's just because it was safety. So many of the purity laws were you don't have if you have sex that day, you are not ceremonially clean until you've taken a bath and changed your clothes. And it's like, cool, you know what? That's fine. Like it was anything that had a biological fluid emission. You touched
Yeah.
a dead person. A lot of this was basics of biology that we didn't have. So God created guards for us to protect us from disease
Like
and
wash your hands before you eat.
right. I mean, wash your hands before you eat. This is the basis of so much of the stuff that we learned that saved lives long before what's her name, that like typhoid Mary, who really
Yeah.
we learned we had to wash our hands. Like
Yeah.
this was thousands of years before. I was like, you should just wash them. And you're not ceremonially clean after you've had sex, after you've touched a dead animal, a dead person. Like this all makes perfect sense to me.
Mhm.
Unclean foods, also similar things. Like the foods pork is really safe to eat. It has not always been really safe to eat. You know,
Right.
only in the last couple of years do you not have to cook pork at a temperature way above what's good for safety because of the kind of form. They finally are like, you can cook it to the same temperature as chicken because they've eliminated those diseases so much. So okay, there's that. Shellfish, again, it can be very dangerous. There are things you can only eat in months that end in R or don't end in R, like because they're not healthy. They're dangerous and poisonous in other times of the year. Protection.
But do you have an opinion on, again, this is like a doctrinal issue, so it's
Yeah,
not going to apply, but like,
probably.
yeah,
Probably have an opinion.
like Jesus specifically saying, "This is my body, this is my blood," and like turn on your humanist brain, it's like, oh, this is cannibalism. Like this is like you're pushing for like cannibalism.
Yeah, so I did not grow up in the Catholic Church, so I like don't
Right.
and I don't actually think it's purely symbolic. So,
Yeah.
but like I just think this is my body. Take this in remembrance of me. I don't think that's just language.
I heard something that really worked for me.
Okay.
And I think it was a Catholic person talking about the comparison of the old covenant and the new. And in the old covenant, they had to sacrifice animals, and then the priests would eat the sacrifice. And so it is a direct symbolic comparison. It's a change in the covenant. We're doing the same thing, but we're doing it very differently. Now I am the sacrifice, and you're all the priests, and you will all eat my body as a remembrance of this, of what I've done for you.
So whether that's like literal,
right?
If it's literal and it's cannibalism, the problem with cannibalism is that it's not inherently, let's be honest, it's not inherently evil. It devalues the sanctity of human life, and it's dangerous because of prions. Like people have a right to live their lives. Like so if a willing person says like, I don't need my body anymore because I'm not using it, and and like it's not gonna also like offend me personally but it's also not going to be dangerous because I'm God and it's perfect. So it's not cannibalism in this. It doesn't have the inherent wrongness that cannibalism has.
It's weird.
It's super weird.
That's what I mean. Like that's where I guess I was going with it. Like it's odd.
But for Anglicans, we believe that there's a real presence. So not that it is transubstantiated and that it becomes flesh. But I don't think Catholics actually believe that either, because they don't believe I listened to a priest say, if you put it under a microscope, you're not gonna see human DNA.
Right, exactly. So I honestly think this is semantics, personally.
I think so
totally.
It's
spiritually transformed. Like, yeah.
And there's a lot of focus on it. I mean, there's a lot of reverence for it because they're saying this is our Lord and this is what we were commanded to do. So there's a higher reverence. Like, you know, if it falls on the floor, the priest has to pick it up and eat it because it can't be thrown in the trash.
Which I respect the reverence. I like
exactly.
that.
And
That's new for me.
Right. And I think like, you know, they understand if someone has a celiac, they have to get the like low gluten ones that barely have any gluten in it, because like it's not turning into
It's not magic.
skin,
Right. It is not
you know?
actually
But
changing chemical
but
makeup.
it is changing in a spiritual aspect. So is this all just semantics between now? I think my non-denominational church, they're very like, whatever,
It's
you know?
purely symbolic.
Right.
Right.
That's
But
my
I do
background.
think it's a lot, um, it's a lot of semantics, in my opinion, because I just want everyone to get along
I know.
so badly.
I know.
But
I want
that,
everyone to agree.
what did you say?
I want everyone to agree.
I know, believe me. But that comparison between the old covenant and the new, that we are now the priests and he is the
That
final
is perfect.
sacrifice.
That
I
is
love
really
it.
good.
That's really strong.
I'm like,
Yeah,
again,
done. That is totally satisfying for
That
me.
wraps it up. Yeah, I like that.
I do too. And that was
I'm
good.
satisfied.
That was we are call us satisfied. I so the in the English, my background is like non-denominational. Like you could have been like, here's some soda and here's a Ritz cracker, and like we can do communion with this.
Okay.
Could have been, so now I'm Anglican. They consecrate like they consecrate it. Part of me is a little bit like, I mean, God can like I still believe that like I could baptize a person. I have every right to baptize a person. I like my churches, I don't know where they stand on it, but I do know that a priest does, like in the church, only a priest can do it. But
Catholics believe that. Like
even
you can,
Catholics, like in a pinch, like if
yeah,
your baby's born and it's about to die, you can baptize it.
you can
right.
baptize, yeah.
So and I think that's sort of what they think, but I'm very no, I could baptize, you know,
Anyone.
I've watched family members baptize someone. They want to get baptized now, tonight, and we just do it in the pool. Like
Right.
I
Yeah.
have seen that happen, and I think that's totally great. Same with communion. Like I would not hesitate to give a dying person communion in that moment and pray over it and be like, you know, we're doing this in remembrance. I think that it takes, but also it's new to me to have like the whole church service be around the
Yeah.
celebrating the Eucharist, and I do love it because I think that acknowledging the presence and taking that in every is like a recommitment every single time. It's a closeness of the
And
relationship.
it's physical. There's a physicality to the ritual and to the sacraments for Catholics that I think is cool. Like I think it's another way of engaging.
Yeah.
And I've heard someone say, like, for people who are not as intellectually quick or curious, like it's the physical grounding in the faith. And sometimes that's all people are able to access. I don't know. There's a lot there that I think is cool.
This is where the divisions in the denominations are so harmful because I am from the background I'm from would have been like Catholics are like they might be saved, they're probably saved, but like by accident because they don't read the Bible and like, and I still there are things that I really fundamentally don't agree with in the Catholic Church. However, I'm still Protestant, but Anglicans are I'm in a very high church, Anglican church, so we have all the sacraments and we have all these like all these specific things. And for me, even though I love to engage mentally, I have really found a lot of power in connecting the physical and mental through like the Catholic calisthenics, the kneel, stand up, kneel, stand up. People are complaining and I'm like, yes, I love it. Like it's so fun crossing yourself on the high, like on Easter Sunday, they did incense. There are candles, there's darkness, there is noise, there are bells, there is so much. It's like a full sensory experience, which tends to be overwhelming for me. I have a sensory processing disorder. So sometimes I seek sensory and sometimes I avoid it. You just never know. But I realized I said to my husband on Saturday night at the Great Easter Vigil, which went really long, and I took a toddler because I didn't know it was going to be that long. I talked about this on the last episode. I told him the only time I feel zero anxiety in my life is sitting here in the pews, not just when I'm praying in that church, in the pews, with all the sensory input, with all of that stuff.
Wow.
It doesn't make sense, but my body, I think my faith feels fully embodied in a space where the sacred is protected and respected, where we have ways to connect in mind and body and spirit and all the different levels. So again, for me, that works. I am not saying this is prescriptive that everybody needs that. For some people who maybe don't have great relationships with embodiment, that actually might be a deterrent for folks. If the body doesn't feel like a safe place to be, that might not be a safe place to engage your faith. But for me, I've done the work. My body's a safe place to be, and it's good for me to be embodied with Christ in my own physical body. And I think that part of the embodiment is the process of taking in the sacrament, taking in communion with a mindset that this is actually something real, has been a part of that process. It's all really interconnected, but I think there is just a ton of power in that. And I wish more people had the opportunity to engage with that while like still being true to their beliefs and values about their denomination, because it's a neat opportunity for some.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It was a little platformy, but I think
no, I love it. I think it's so
about the
cool.
embodied
I think it's cool that you have like come to that, you know, that that's like a change for you, and you see, you know, the value in it. I think it's so cool.
I also see the benefit for people who've been in liturgical churches their whole life to switch to rock and roll church, because it is not vain repetition. It is not rote for me. But I can see if you've been saying it since you were a child that this might lose some of the magic.
Yes, and let me tell you,
like
I had no idea what I was saying or why. No clue. Since studying the Mass and like why certain things are said, what the kneeling means, what the standing means. Kneeling is humility, standing is prayer, like all of these things, where the call and responses are coming from the Bible, what it like. Now I can go and be like, wow, like this is
I know what's going on.
This is cool.
How widespread is that understanding in your experience in the Catholic Church of the things that you just said?
Very low, but I have a weird thing where I assume that every Catholic like had no idea what was going on, which I think is true in my generation, or maybe just like within my friends who were like, I think it tends to be true, but it's not true across the board. It's definitely not true across the board, but I think it's a very small percentage of truly devoted Catholics who like actually care and believe. I think there are more who are just like, well, whatever, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know if I believe in this, because it's like a nationality instead of a, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like you can be I mean, of course you can be ethnically Jewish but not religiously Jewish, but specifically I have friends who attend a synagogue who are like they attend religious services who are atheists, but it's part of it's such a cultural phenomenon for them.
That is a lot of Catholics. That's a lot of Catholics.
That is a lot.
It's not all. And I kind of coming back in the Protestant way, I was like, wow, Catholicism is paganism. And it's like, and they're all like, and there's no such thing as there are no real Catholics. And like, I was like really hard. I was like basically brainwashed against Catholics. And then I started actually listening to the truly like Christian Catholics. And I think there's a lot there for the people who truly believe. And I think it's cool. I think there are like a lot of aspects about it that I actually really like. But there are definitely majority fake, apathetic, not real Catholics.
Yeah. And I think there are probably reasons that are like inherent to the denominations that come for that, but that's not a thing we need to get into. But I'm curious, and that's a topic we have another time. Maybe when we're ready for something more controversial. Because again, I don't think that this is across the board. Every denomination has been infiltrated with paganism in some ways, and prosperity gospel and manifesting, and what a better way to infiltrate. Like the enemy of Christ is not going to come from outside.
It's exactly it.
It's not going to come
from outside the church. All the churches are infiltrated. Of course. Exactly. That's what you would do if you were.
He's not going to show up in like
it'd be stupid to be like, I'm not going there, because that's just not how it works. That's not how warfare works.
Right. This is guerrilla warfare.
It is.
I can't. I'm sorry. I started to laugh because I never hear guerrilla warfare and picture GUERILLA. I picture guerrilla warfare. I'm like, yeah, guerrilla warfare every time. Sorry.
What the heck is up with that? Why do they choose that word? Like, what does that mean?
Great. Well, guerre, that's the word for war. Like in the Latin root, GUER. I just in French it is, so I'm thinking that it has to do with war. So it's like war.
Right.
Warfare.
So right. Yeah.
So why do we call guerrillas? I bet if anything, the name of a gorilla is probably like it's a warrior primate. If anything, it's named after, not the other way around.
Oh my gosh, guerrilla etymology, guerra, because guerre in French, guerra, guerrilla, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was, I never thought about that. Yeah, it's warfare.
Cool.
This
is
warfare.
This is like not just a little bit warfare, it's super warfare.
This is warfare.
I think that we have probably
I think we
Well,
did it.
we're right at our same time. We're right around the same time. So we can
Good.
keep going, but we can cut it off and just know that we have to do another one.
And we will do another one. I would love to do another one.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
this is
have
so
to.
fun.
I know, it's
So
so fun.
yeah, but I want to know, do we have parting thoughts, like closing thoughts before I give you? I'm going to do a little closing because I want to talk about what's next for the podcast. What, because we've made some, Lisa and I have made some decisions, and you get to hear with everyone else.
Same.
But let's hear.
I still think God made it weird, but he also made it beautiful. So there's enough there that allows me to accept the weirdness. And I don't know, I think you came up with some good answers too.
Yeah.
We take the good with the weird, and God is always good, but I would not say that he's always normal. He's the definition of normal.
I would say God is always good, but he's not always not weird.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. For sure. I'm pretty sure that I agree with you. I'm not okay. Elise, should we talk about a little bit about what's next for the podcast?
Sure.
Okay. So we said this at the end of the last podcast. We are going to be moving over to the Theologyology Substack page. And in the next week or so, before you see this one, probably, there will be a page that Elise will have for her own Substack. And then so Elise will have a Substack, we'll have the fake library, and then we will have Theologyology. And we're going to start posting there. We are going to host a paid version. So this is the part that I wanted to talk about a little bit, because we are going to host a paid version over there for live we know for sure that we want to do live conversations. Like, that's one thing. We want people to be able to engage with us. That's been my favorite feedback so far, folks being like, I want to participate and I want to talk.
And I want people to participate.
Right. We want to, and so we're going to have our friends on. We would have a guest on every single time. That's fine. Actually, I think it's almost better, but we want to have some of those like live in-person conversations. So for sure, that's going to be something for paid subscribers. And the reason for doing that is we need some better software for podcasting. And I just there's a little bit of expense associated with that. So we're going to try to cover our expenses so that we can do a little bit higher production value. And then we've set up, if you pledge, I don't know if you've seen this, but you can pledge to follow somebody in the future. And if you pledge before we launch it, it'll be $5 a month for the first year. So I've got that saved so that if you pledge, you get that. Once we launch, it'll go up to I think it's like the standard $8 a month or $8 a year we'll probably do. There will be the 150 founding membership one, and you get a piece of merch with that. We're not sure what that's going to be yet, but there will be a perk, probably like a little VIP conversation. We don't expect anybody to actually do this, just FYI. But if somebody did, we'd be like, hey, let's do this. And you'll get like a t-shirt or a mug or a sticker or something. We're working on that. So if you want to, you can pledge that. I don't know when we're going to make it live, but probably in the next few weeks. And in the meantime, you can do that. You can subscribe to Elise's when you find it. We'll add that to the show notes when we know what the page is going to be. And this will be the last one that I'm also posting to. Actually, I lied. The last one will be the last one that was posted to the fake library. So this one won't be there, but we will link you over there. So if you're a fake library person, stay there. We're gonna move you over. We're gonna keep going. We're taking this.
Come hang out.
And Molly saying bye.
Yeah, Molly just
Molly.
This was good. Caroline, thank you so much for talking with us. Like, I'm just like, can we stop and then just do part 2? Because this was too fun. We'll do this a lot more.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
I would love to.
All right. Elise, Caroline, I love you.
Love you back.
Bye.
Bye.